distribution is such that Linköping is clearly the dominant node because of materials production, and we'll hear about that during these days. After Linköping, Uppsala and Gothenburg and Lund and Stockholm are just about equal within the noise of the measurement. And then I think Umeå and even Luleå have some publications as well. Most of this work has been funded by the Strategic Research Foundation. There have been two SSF programs, one that is about to finish and one that has just started. We are pretty active on the European front. There are several European projects, including at least three that are coordinated by Chalmers. The European Science Foundation has a significant program called the Graphene, where many of the universities are participating. And of course, many of the researchers will also get funding from the Swedish Science Foundation, VR. Rough characterization. This is of course an extremely risky thing to do because most of these places people do many other things except for the one or two that I put on the list. So if your favorite topic is not on the list, I apologize. At Chalmers we do quite a lot of electronics and some mechanics, as you will hear in these 2 days. In Linköping, the dominant field is materials production on silicon carbide, but also photovoltaics. In Uppsala, chemistry is very strong, both the laborative but also the computational in terms of density functional theory modeling. But they also do electronics. In Lund, as far as I could see, they do quite a lot of characterization in the materials and chemistry field. KTH focuses on transport and modeling, and in Umeå I found references on photovoltaics and magnetism. So that was all I wanted to say about Sweden. As I said, it was short. In Europe, we are also quite active in the field of something that is called FET flagships. FET stands for Future Emerging Technologies, and flagships are an initiative within the FET, which has initiatives are supposed to be visionary, multidisciplinary, nucleated from information and communication technologies. They are supposed to generate technological innovation and economic growth. Thus far, it's very usual EU program, could be almost any program. The difference comes on the next paragraph, that they are supposed to run for 10 years and have a budget of 100 million euros per year per flagship. So we are talking serious money here. About 1 billion krona per year. The project is progressing so that 6 pilots were chosen in January of this year, and out of these 6 there will be a further selection, and 2 will be selected to be flagships, and the flagships will be launched in 2013. And the reason why I'm telling about this is that one of the 6 pilots focuses on graphene and related two-dimensional materials. And that one is this initiative called Graphene-Driven Revolutions in ICT and Beyond, where our vision is to create a large research community that studies these materials to bring them essentially from the laboratories to products and applications of the industry. The flagship structure is so that there is a small pilot consortium of only 9 partners coordinated by Chalmers. Other members are Universities of Manchester, Cambridge, and Lancaster in the UK, the Italian National Research Council, the Catalan Institute of Nanotechnology, 2 companies, one large one, one small one, and the European Science Foundation. But the full flagship will of course be much bigger, and by now there are about 80 companies and universities in about 20 countries, representing about 150 research groups that have expressed interest in joining this ship. And the motivation for choosing graphene as one of the flagship topics is this exponential growth, both in terms of academic publications, but also in terms of patents that has appeared since 2004. In particular on this patent data, you should realize that this data was collected in January or February, so last year's figures are underestimated. There are many more. There's some delay in that. The areas that we are going to study cover information and communication technologies, where we do both consumer and high-performance electronics and optoelectronics. For instance, here there is a graphene-based screen from Andrea Ferrari in Cambridge. These flexible screens are one of the first applications, because currently your smartphone has a screen that contains indium, and indium mostly comes from China, or a little bit of that comes from Canada, and there isn't enough indium to give everybody a touch screen. We run out of it. It's not a material that is readily available. Another area is materials. Graphene is about 300 times stronger than the strongest steel, which opens possibilities for very strong and light composites, for instance in aerospace and cars, but also applications such as conductive inks for printed electronics. For energy, graphene is used in advanced batteries and supercapacitors. Supercapacitors are roughly like batteries, except that they are much faster to charge and discharge. So when you have your electric car, you can go to the gas station or the electric station, go have a cup of coffee and a pastry, and during that time it has gotten enough charge that you can continue driving, as opposed to parking it in your garage overnight. In health, there are some applications like this sensor from Kees Dekker in Delft, where he pulls a DNA through a hole in graphene membrane, and the conductance of the graphene membrane is affected by which base pair happens to be in the hole, and that way you can read off the DNA. There are other types of biosensors that are interesting. In the area of consumer electronics, there is a concept that was proposed by Nokia a few years ago, where you have a cell phone that you can have in your breast pocket when you are not using it. When you take it out, and you can fold it out to get a keyboard of a more convenient size, you can get a large screen. It's a flexible material, so if you don't want to carry it in your pocket but use it as a bracelet, that's fine. It's something that is smearing away the distinctions between what you call clothing and what you call electronics. And if your phone doesn't fit to your apparel today, you can change the appearance of the phone, for instance, like she's doing here, and using the combined optical functionality. So that's one of the things that we are going to pursue in the flagship. Okay. Graphene research in Europe is pretty large already. There are about 54 European projects that study graphene, but the research is very fragmented. The 54 projects run independently of each other. And what we want to do is that we want to get rid of this fragmentation and create synergies, so that the sum is more than just the individual pieces. This idea is not unique in the world. There are others that have similar ideas, predominantly South Korea, where they announced an investment of $300 million on graphene research. Then Kostya Novoselov traveled to South Korea and told that, well, Europe is considering $1,000 million or euros in graphene, and then Korea increased its bid to $600 million. So now we just want to have a Korean with the same impact come to Europe. Singapore is also very big, much bigger than you would think from its size. The US is also having activities, but they are a little smaller. But we think that we should be able to do reasonably well in this competition, because, quite frankly, our scientific and technological quality is very high. For instance, our scientific advisory council that we have in this pilot contains no fewer than 4 recent European Nobel Prize winners, including the 2 guys behind the boom for graphene. We also have the leading European graphene theorists, and we have representation from the Korean initiative and from the American initiative. Just for curiosity, there is a difference between the Korean way of distributing funding and the European way of distributing funding. Byung-hee, or his research group, gets 90 million of the 600 million that Korea is going to invest in. It would be an impossibility for Europe to put that much money in one research group. So what we think is inevitable is that graphene and the related two-dimensional materials will lead to a technology shift, essentially a new era of carbon. If you want to quote Andre again, you could say that they are probably going to have an impact that is comparable to that of plastics in the last century. The pilot, as I said, contains 9 partners. It does no research. It's trying to prepare the flagship, and you can contribute to the preparation of the flagship. We have a website, www.graphene-flagship.eu, where you can go and you can sign up and you can contribute to the research agenda, what should be studied in this big flagship. For the corporate participants, it's also interesting to note that on October 18 and actually now 2 days, October 18 to 19, we will have an industrial workshop in Madrid. We are just preparing the invitation letter to be sent out early next week or later this week. There are, on the latest list that I saw, there were about 115 companies representing a number of different areas. Research agenda, okay, that's something that we are going to figure out during the year, but some of the things that will undoubtedly be studied are electronics in different versions, also transparent and flexible electronics, photonics and plasmonics, or photovoltaics if you wish, is going to be an important area. New device concepts based, for instance, on spintronics. Albert Firth is one of the people in our scientific advisory council who has a great interest in that. Micro and nano electromechanical systems, different kinds of sensors and composite materials, and of course as a key enabling technology, production and functionalization, but also things that I have not listed here, such as toxicology. So at the first step we will produce a roadmap of what we will do. And now I think I will give the floor to Andreas, who will tell about corporate participation.
Yes, and a little bit